Hello, self-healing fam. Today, I wanted to give you everything I have used to completely transform my reality, to shift from things that I didn't think that I could have to having everything that I really want in life, all through really understanding the different levels of transformation. And so I'm going to start to dive into the principles high level today, and we'll keep excavating them as we go along over everything else that we share on this channel. But today, we're going to start with the principles and we're going to dive straight in to the 3 stages of transformation. So the first stage is examination, right? It's ultimately pulling out everything that exists, understanding what you're dealing with before you begin the process of actually changing things. So the second stage would be the transformation or the transmutation. And then the third stage is the implementation, and the most important part, the integration, right? So if you think about overall healing from, let's say, a trauma or a past experience, the first thing is typically talk therapy, right? The first thing is talking about it with friends and family. Sometimes it's debriefing after the incident happened. And then after that, you move into changing the way that you fundamentally see what happened, changing the way that it settles into your system, working with your somatic experience of it, getting back to safety in your body, and then ultimately learning what it means for you, which really oftentimes includes an element of letting go. So a lot of times between the stages, between examination and transformation, there's oftentimes an element of forgiveness. And between transformation and integration, there's oftentimes an element of grief. So knowing that overall, this is the sacred journey that you are embarking on anytime you want something to be different than it is. It typically requires these 3 stages for something to fundamentally change, whether that's the way you see yourself, the way that you see your family, the way that you interact with the world. It usually requires these 3 things in order for that to happen. So where do you start? Well, level 1 is really gathering the idea that your past does not define you, right? So when we talk about your past, a lot of times the way people present their past is in a story, right? This happened to me when I was a kid. This is where I started. This is my, where I heralded from. This is the important parts of this. This is where I went to school. This is what I majored in. This was the first boyfriend I had. Whatever it is, every single part of your story is actually not necessary for you to become who you're meant to be, right? And this is a kind of a crazy concept, but I realized that the purpose of a story is to give you the breadcrumbs so that you can find out and better define the role you're meant to play. So if this entire world that we're living in is just consciousness and its great experiment called the human existence, where consciousness comes down and basically embodies the world, right? And then it embodies different beings and different living organisms and continues to create in this great experiment. It's constantly moving itself out into the universe, expanding itself more and more every single day so that it can experience new and different ways of being, right? So if consciousness came and decided to incarnate in you, and then it started to give you clues about who you were, Ram Dass talks about this as the spacesuit, right? You were first basically incarnated. He says you took birth and you became who you are now. You put on this spacesuit. It was called a human body, and you learned how to use it, right? It took a couple years for you to learn how to feed yourself, and then you learned more fine motor function, and then you began to use the brain to do specific things, to learn, to memorize, to understand. And then you developed a sense of ego, right? Your role in the world, or your place, or your sense of identity, which we'll get to in level 2. But really, what you're coming into is the sense of being. And as you come into the sense of being and you begin to identify with the things around you, you begin to create stories, right? Oh, even a child. Oh, he hit me. She doesn't like me. He's funny. This is great. This is hard. This makes me sad. And then we develop our connection with our emotions, right? Typically the big 3, sad, mad, and glad. You begin to understand, what do these emotions mean? When do they typically come about for me? And then as you grow and mature, you become more acquainted with the whole spectrum of human emotion, right? Then when you reflect on these moments, you're able to associate your emotion with an instance or an action or an inaction that did or didn't happen. And a lot of times this is just part of living, right? It's meant to be the great experience of you becoming who you are, of you knowing who you are, but ultimately serving the purpose of becoming who you will be. So if you haven't gone through this phase yet, that's where you want to start. You want to start by understanding the role you were meant to play. So some things you can do to start to identify this, not just the story, right, but really the essence of who you are and who you are becoming. The role that you play oftentimes can be illuminated by looking at a couple different facets of your existence, a couple different pieces of the story. So the first thing I would encourage you to look at is the things that you have been rightfully accused of, right? If you think of your friends and they're just like, you're just so like easygoing, right? If you think of even possibly a boss who's like, your attention to detail is like really intense. If someone has ever said like, I don't like being around you because you're always just pushing me to be better, or you're pushing me to be different than I am, right? These could be catalyst roles. These could be different things that you naturally do, sometimes even without knowing. Now, there are elements of this that could have come about because of who you were pretending to be or who you were conditioned to be from childhood. Now, that's not really what we're talking about, right? I'm talking about the essence of you coming through in moments when people say, God, you're just so intense. And you're like, actually, I am. Right? That is something that I can feel aligned with when even accused of it, right? So thinking about times, even if they weren't really positive experiences or moments when you felt like, wow, it's true, but I wish it wasn't. So just jot a couple of those things down. Another thing to consider are the things that happen without effort, right? So in those moments, whenever you enter a room or you enter a situation, what typically happens, right? Does the mood shift? Do people become more aware? Do people become less aware? Do people become more effusive? Do people talk more, talk less? Start to think of the things that happen when you enter a situation. Think of the unique traits that you have in your group of friends, right? If each one of you had a little persona that you embodied, or you were all different caricatures in the little group of friends that you hold in, what is the trait that you embody more than anyone else? Think of your role specifically in that group of people. What was the role you played in your family growing up? What are some things that you are absolutely passionate about, right? Things that, if you could study this all day, every day, if you were literally paid to experience and study and explore a concept, what would that be? Pull out a couple of different things that really interest you. And then the last is look for common threads, right? Were you typically the first one there? Were you typically the last one to catch up? Were you typically the person who knew stuff before it was going to happen? Look through just the different moments in your life, never taking one moment and making it the definition of who you are, but beginning to look at it as many different connecting threads in the fabric of who you have become, right? And ultimately, once you've done this, I encourage you to extract all of this and view it more simply as a definition or a loose picture of your role in the world, right? So thinking of yourself as your role in the world and less as something you have to be or someone you have to be is the first step to examining, to excavating, to understanding your purpose so that you become less attached to it and you can move on to stage 2. Stage 2 is really about realizing that the world is simply a mirror of everything that you are seeking to experience. Everything you seek to understand is first reflected to you by the world around you. This is found really clearly in the judgment paradox, right? Anytime you judge someone for anything at all, it's really just a part of yourself that you've yet to accept, right? It's really something or a trait or a behavior in you that you don't like. And so when you move on to level 2, you stop worrying as much about the role that you play in the world, and you start to understand the active role you play in the world that you consistently create, right? Identity is really just a construct. I heard a quote, again, from a book I was reading, and it was The Art of Becoming Nothing, I believe. But in that book, the quote was, "When I don't know who I am, I serve you. When I know who I am you." And I thought it was a beautiful way of exploring how when we don't know exactly who we are or the role we're supposed to play, we oftentimes default, and we are basically the response to the world around us. We are in service of the world around us. We are seeking validation from the world around us. We're looking for all of those meaning pieces in the world around us. But when we realize that fundamentally we are the same thing as everyone else in this world, we become the one being served. Right? Because if you do something unto others, it is as if you have done it unto yourself. This is a principle found in many different religious structures, including Christianity and Buddhism. It's really about the oneness, right? Understanding it's not me versus you. It's not you win, I lose. Really, it's all of us learning how to be in a state of flow, in a state of abundance, in a state of experiencing the world around us. So stepping into this level is really understanding the active role you play, right? Whether you like it or not, if you are incarnated here, you've decided that you're going to play this game, right? You are in the matrix, so enjoy it. Realize that everything that you want to see change about the world is really something you're trying to change within yourself. So if you step into the possibility of change and you open your heart up to being part of that change, not just complaining about the things you see around you, but really taking an active role in changing them first within yourself, you'll find a lot more peace in the space around you. So level 1 is about identifying, releasing the specific components of the story and really understanding that they are all just breadcrumbs to the meaning and the purpose for which you fulfill on this earth. And then level number 2 is understanding that the world as you are experiencing it right now is a mere reflection of how you are experiencing yourself. So when you begin to experience yourself more fully, embrace yourself for who you are, you really will start to see the world around you shift, which will fundamentally reflect back to you more of what you would rather be seeing. And this is the basic principle underlying the art of manifestation or abundance mindsets and mantras, and a lot of that guru new age stuff you hear on the internet is really about first settling within your own system and then allowing the world around you to begin to reflect back to you that subtleness, that openness that exists within you. So this brings us to level 3. Level 3 is where you let it all go. Level 3 is the bliss state. Level 3 is the simple existence, disconnected from the weighty past or the anxious future. It is in this moment, it is every moment, it extends in every direction as far as you can imagine, and all yet exists in the fraction of a moment. Of the sense of experience you get, it's when you truly understand, as within, so without. When you reach that peace in the homeostasis of your internal and your external experience. When you settle in, you know everything you want, you have. That you have everything you want. I've developed mantras to keep me and remind me in this space, and one of them that I like to use and chant frequently is everything I want I have. I have everything I want. Realizing that everything I have created is something that I desired, and should I desire anything else, whether in this moment or any moment to come, all I need to do is identify that desire within me, and immediately it becomes mine. It is how I move through the world with ease, having everything I could possibly want or desire, because as soon as you've crystallized that desire, it's yours. The world is co-creating with you. Everything that has happened and will happen and is happening right now is happening in pursuit of a love story with you. It is happening for your benefit. And the only time I've ever find myself fallen out of these kind of moments of bliss and self-actualization is typically the unrecognized parts of me, right? And finding that bliss state, that euphoric state, the samadhi state is really about the full integration of every part of you. And I think that that's kind of our life's work. I think when you're finally at that fully integrated state, oftentimes there's no need for you to be in the earth realm anymore. Oftentimes that's when you pass on to the next thing. So if you're in pursuit of that, typically the work to be done at this level is the integration of the parts of you that you have yet to acknowledge. A lot of times this is known as shadow work. This is what Carl Jung spent most of his life studying, what many healing practitioners are in active study of today, and what I really enjoy doing most is integrating every single part of you. There aren't any bad parts, there aren't good parts, there's only you in every dimension and facet of you. And the more we open our loving arms to accept in every single part of us, the more we experience that state of bliss, of peace, of simply knowing ourselves. So in pursuit of this, I have come up with a couple of tools. One I mentioned is the persistent mantras. Another thing that I do is a daily gratitude practice, constantly resettling in to everything that I have in this moment and existing in such pure gratitude of that. Also working on embodiment, knowing my own body, getting familiar with my body, using it as an antenna to tell me things, not simply trying to run everything through my mind, but also experiencing the world with the movement of my body. I use visualizations to understand even where my spirit is that I may not yet have recognized. And ultimately, I consistently look for, seek out, and am open to the idea of developing a relationship with the parts of me that I have yet to discover. One of the best things that I've actually found in doing shadow work, besides the journaling or the reflective activities or different shamanic journey work, is actually being able to chat this out, right? Actually being able to talk backwards and forwards with someone, have somebody point out the different pieces in me. Now, I understand that this is not accessible for everyone. Not everyone can work with a coach, with a therapist, with a healer, with a medium, with someone who can help them see the parts of themselves that they haven't yet acknowledged. And so I developed a ChatGPT prompt. And I've put a lot of love and effort into this, and I'm going to give it away completely for free. It's going to be in the description down below. Use this at your own risk, because this is going to have you examine with clear eyes the parts of you that might still be holding you back from everything you want in the world. So I encourage you to take it, use it, have some set aside time, light a candle, set sacred space, have time where you can use this tool to also not just become aware of, not just to do the excavation, but also to do the transformation, right? To see the parts of you that aren't the way that you would like them to be, and to, with loving care, like a parent, changing and adjusting the positioning of their child, position yourself for what you want to experience in this world with all the love and acceptance, realizing every part of you is simply trying to help you, is in pursuit of you having everything you want in this world. Sometimes the way it goes about it might not be the best thing, right? I think of oftentimes a kid who's making breakfast in bed for their parent, maybe on Mother's or Father's Day, and the eggs might be a little bit runny because they're learning, right? So there might be parts of you that are trying to help you live the life that you clearly crave, but it's just going about it in the wrong way. It might be trying to have you, really level up your world, but it's trying to get rid of certain friendships that are limiting you. And instead of addressing those with the maturity that you are capable of, it's simply creating fights with people, right? It might know that you feel safest when you're in a state of chaos, because that may have been the environment you were raised in. And so it's constantly creating chaos so that you feel at home. But that chaos may not serve you anymore, and you may be willing to step out and feel not at home for a temporary space in order to create that sense of peace within yourself. And that's okay. But working with those parts of you is important. So going through the excavation and the awareness, moving into the transfiguration, into the transmutation and the transformation, where you're really changing those things, knowing that you are safe in whatever state you are in, knowing that you are blissfully out of control, right? Whatever you need to know for yourself to be in the best position to fulfill your purpose is what you want to be facilitating there, right? Changing those, what, most people would identify as limiting beliefs, really changing those over, and then ultimately the integration, right? So don't stop this work simply at the awareness, being like, oh, I can see that I've been really addicted to suffering or chaos, right? Or cortisol or whatever might be happening. And not stopping at, oh, okay, so instead of thinking, chaos keeps me safe, I should think, chaos is a tool that I have access to, but I choose to not use today, or whatever it might be, right? Instead of just changing these things or just being aware of them, also integrate them into your life. What would someone who trusts themselves totally and completely do, right? What would they do first thing in the morning? Would they rush to their phone and launch up all the different apps? Would they read a bunch of online courses? Would they understand everything just by what they can physically comprehend or mentally comprehend? No, they would live in a state of peace. So the integration is really the repatterning of your day-to-day life to be that reflects what you intend to be, with open, loving presence with everything that you are. So that's all I had for today. These are the 3 levels that I would consider as a part of the transformational journey of becoming who you really want to be, of understanding your purpose, knowing what you are capable of, knowing what you're meant to do, settling in peace, and really experiencing the fullness that life has to offer. And all of a sudden not worrying about how much time we have, or worrying about who your friends are, or whether or not you'll accomplish everything, or whether or not you file your taxes on time. Just let it all go. But all of that requires you to find a sense of inner peace. And these are the tools that I would recommend using if inner peace is what you seek. And if you need anything else, please reach out in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going. The world is here to help itself evolve. And every experience you have is something you have the power to change, but it all starts with you. We'll see you next time.